So Tottenham have done it. Tottenham have done the unthinkable. Tottenham have just beaten Leeds 2-1 away from home at Ellen Road to actually win a game of football before an international break. So let's get straight into Leeds United 1, Tottenham 2. So Spurs made six changes from the team which drew in Norway midweek against Bodo Glimt. Six changes, including Christian Romero, Destiny Doggy, João Palhinha, Xavi Simons, Mo Kudus, and Matisse Tell all coming into the team. It was a game which, going into the international break, I touched on it last time. There was a lot of talk about whether Spurs would do what they usually do with an international break and lose beforehand. It's a record, which I'm not sure how many games it's been now. I think it's over 10. But nice to get that off of our backs. In terms of the three promoted teams which have come up, I think they're going to be harder games than they were last year because all of them are not trying to play a sort of ideal way, the way that a lot of teams want to, a bit more expansive. That's not the route they're going down, looking quite compact, hard to break down, that sort of thing. We've seen that from Leeds before. We've seen it from Burnley earlier in the season, and I'm sure when we play Sunderland, we'll see it. But Leeds at home, I thought they'd give a good account of themselves. I had a few early chances. There's one where Joe Rodon hit the post early on. That was a chance. There's one for Calvert-Lewin. I think they hit the post again as well. But yeah, in terms of the lineup, obviously Matisse Tell coming in up front for Richarlison, who did eventually come on. But I think once Richarlison come on, you could see why Tell started it because just needing them fresh legs, and obviously it paid dividends for Thomas Frank because Matisse Tell obviously opened the score with that effort from range. And firstly, obviously, very, very glad for Matisse Tell, the sort of stuff he's been through. And if you look at the last time he was in a Spurs shirt starting a game, Doncaster, he really, really struggled. And it looked like he was just absolutely shot of confidence completely. And I'm hoping that this goal would, give him that sort of confidence. And I thought overall we had quite a decent game playing through the middle. I think it's probably the best game he's had playing through the middle for Tottenham. Yeah, I just think that goal, in terms of if you look at the other profiles of strikers in our squad, I don't think Richarlison scores that, and I don't think Solanke scores it. And I think one good thing about Tell, at least through the middle, is he gets shots away often and he gets them away fast. And that's something that Richarlison and Solanke need to work on in their game. It almost feels like they need the perfect opportunity in front of them or the ball to just fall to them in sort of an opportunistic way. And it feels like, again, I wouldn't have thought that Richarlison or Solanke would be shooting from that range. Um, but yeah, obviously, in terms of our game plan, I think it worked perfectly in that first half in terms of, well, I say perfectly. It worked well up until obviously Leeds equalising. You can see with the flat middle three, um, not the flat middle three, sorry, with the Bentancur and Paulinho double axis in midfield. That's one which I think in games like this, where look, we maybe didn't have as much of the ball as we would have wanted. I think those are the sorts of games for Bentancur and Paulinho, maybe a bit of a higher caliber opposition, maybe like the Man City earlier in the season. We've seen how well they can both do together. So yeah, that was us taking the lead. Lovely by Bentancur to nip in, and then Kudus putting it through, and then Matisse Tell shot from range, probably 25, 30 yards out, took a deflection, and which probably lifted it over the keeper. But really, really nice for Tell to get that. He's been struggling, and I think the struggles have been well documented this season. So yeah, that's the best way you can respond, and hopefully that's just moved them up in Thomas Frank's estimation set when it comes to rotations, team selections, things like that. Wilson Odobert on the left, thought in the first half he had a really, really good game. Not quite the finished product in terms of that left winger spot and what you'd want from them. But I'd say at the minute it's his position to lose. Um, I don't think Brennan Johnson come on until like the last 4 or 5 minutes, and obviously Tell was starting through the middle. But we've seen Odegaard there on Tuesday in midweek, and we've seen him there again um, yesterday in the 12:30 at Ellen Road, and I think that Simmons had his best game in a Tottenham top so far, and I don't think that that's a coincidence that he has players like Odegaard and Udogie who can run beyond and they're not afraid to run at their man, that sort of thing. I think that really opened up some nice space, and I don't know if it was before or after we took the lead. I think it might have been just after, where Odegaard sort of got the ball, and he wasn't a million miles away from where the away fans are at Ellen Road and he just had a lovely little drop of the shoulder, just dinked a lovely ball over the top for a doggy who went forward, managed to get to the edge of the box, and then played it to Kudus, who should have done better and didn't hit the target. But that was some lovely link up play. I think it was a doggy, Simmons, Odegaard. Might not have been Simmons, actually, might have just been the two of them. But that's some really nice play. And with a doggy, you could see that he wasn't 100% comfortable with the ball when he was going forward. In terms of the final third, putting a few nice balls actually across the game, but that particular chance, it's almost like the defenders were standing off him and they sort of stood him up, and there was just room to go into. And I wonder if maybe could have took a bit more, maybe one or two more touches before playing it to Kudus, who I think probably would have had an easier chance, but Kudus should have scored that one. There was one right after the equaliser where Benton Core was just dallying on the ball and give it to Calvert Lewin who put it over the bar. And it did feel like one of them games where you're looking at Calvert Lewin and you're struggling to get into the game and that sort of thing. And the longer the clock went on, the more you're thinking this is the sort of time where he would go and get his first goal in the league for. Well, actually, no, it's not the first because I think he scored against Wolves, but it did feel like that sort of game. Um, and then not long after, Leeds level, Aronson shot from range, bit of a deflection, but again, I think Vicario's got to do a lot better with those ones. Look, I'm not a goalkeeper, I've never played in goal, but that's just basics. If you can't catch the ball, push it away from danger. And look, there was a deflection, which meant Vicario seen it late, which is obviously, well, it's probably bamboozled him a bit, but for me, I think he's got to be doing better there. And I don't think it's at the point where we need to be having a conversation about Antonin Kinski being our first team keeper. But that is, I'd say, Wolves, Brighton, and Leeds. I think that's 3 games where I've looked at Vicario and the goal we've conceded and thought he needs to be doing better. Spurs aren't at the stage now. For me personally, I don't think that goalkeepers are number one priority. But going forward this year, I think Vicario in his first season, really good start, and then sort of second half of the season dropped off quite a bit. And then last year, I think when he was called upon, he was fine. And then obviously got the injury, nearly dropped the goal for Hoyland in the Europa League final where Van de Ven got it off. And I think had that gone in, maybe the narrative around Guillermo Vicario would be totally, totally different. But for now, I think I wouldn't say it's a concern yet because there's more pressing matters in the team, but I don't quite think we're at the stage where Antonin Kinski needs to become Tottenham's first team goalkeeper. I think with Vicario, I think that spot's still his, but what I will say is that, I think he's going to be assessed a bit differently in the next few games, just purely based off of since the international break, he's looked a little bit shaky, but he made some good saves as well. Leeds is one of them days where, and it does sound cliche, maybe a game like this last season, that is a game where we're losing. But going into halftime, overall, I didn't think it was too bad in the first half. I thought actually we broke forward with a lot of purpose, maybe not as often as we would have liked to. But yeah, going in at halftime 1-1, and then obviously after after the halftime interval. Spurs take the lead again. Mo Kudus with his first goal for the club. Um, and it's a weird one with Kudus because from that, it feels like he's not got many goals or assists for us. He's obviously got his first goal yesterday for us, and I didn't realize he actually got the assist as well. So he's now currently leading as the most assists in the league of any player. And now for a goal to go alongside it, it almost feels like with assists, they obviously don't get they can be subjective. Some could be like a defense splitting pass, some could be a 5 yard layoff, which is probably why they're not, the when a player builds assist, it's not as much of, hype around them and that sort of thing. But, you've seen all of these new signings about getting to the 7 games with 0 goals, 0 assists. I think Kudus now, I don't know how many he's on, but I know he's leading. I think it might be 4 he's got. But for him to get that goal, I think that really sort of validates the performances that he's put in this season. Because for me, I think he's been our best player. And so far, I think we've become a bit over reliant on him on the right hand side, just in terms of looking to make something happen. It was a lot better on the left hand side this game. And I think that was down to personnel and Xavi Simons coming through the middle because a lot of our build ups and sort of chances we create come from Kudus and maybe sometimes Porro, where he's swinging that wicked delivery that we all know he's got into the box. And the left hand side is sort of where our issues have been. Is it going to be Spencer Udogie? Bit of a question as to the left back, who the starting left back is. Left wing, I think there's definitely a conversation to be had about who our best left winger is and who Frank prefers, which at the minute looks like Odegaard. And I don't think a performance like yesterday would have done his case any harm. I thought Odegaard was good yesterday. I thought Udogie was good yesterday, and I thought Simmons was good yesterday. So it was quite nice because I could imagine if you were Leeds' coaching team and you were looking at how we've played this season, I think you can see a lot of the stuff that we do comes down the right hand side, and the left hand side's not had the same effect. So for us to look a bit more dangerous, a bit more cohesive down the left hand side, I thought it was really promising. Um, and yeah, there were some chances for Leeds. I can't think of any real standout ones in terms of real let-offs for us. I think in the first half, the Calvert-Lewin one was a big let-off. But in the second half, I don't think there was that many. There was quite a few balls into the box where a Leeds player would go down and sort of half-heartedly appeal. But we looked solid. We really did. And then the only other one I can think was late on towards the game where very similar to the goal that they scored, it was shot from range, which sort of bounced up in front of Akari. And this time he sort of parried it up and away rather than just in front of him. And then Udogie was there to get the header in. And yeah, in terms of the subs, we've seen Kudus and Simmons coming off. We've seen Brennan Johnson and Papsar coming on. We've seen Danso come on for Odegaard. And I think there was one more. Notably, Archie Gray didn't get any game time, which, is disappointing with him being a local lad and obviously the Gray family, and how much of a decorated history they have with Leeds. For him to not get on, especially considering that he was trusted in the games against sort of Bodo Glimt, started the first game of the season against Burnley, and then we've not really seen too much of him since. So a bit of a disappointment for him to not get on, but as long as we got the points, that's all that would have been on Frank's mind. And yeah, Richarlison come on, and if I'm honest, he really didn't have a good game. It wasn't notably bad, but I think it just looked a bit off it. Maybe it's the fact that he'd played essentially a full 90 minutes in Norway on Tuesday, and now had to come on away at promoted team like Leeds, where Ellen Road can really get behind their players and really sort of give them that added momentum. but seeing the game out, and that's all you can ask. He did have one chance where he sort of drilled it and it went a bit wide, but other than that, there's not too much I can think of really. That was Thomas Frank's 10th game as Spurs manager so far, and yeah, overall, I'm quite positive about what I've seen so far. Just the one defeat, in terms of in the league, and that was to Bournemouth. Obviously, the only other defeat was the Super Cup on penalties, which again was quite impressive. I'm hoping that after this international break, you would have seen the way that Adogi and Odebear linked up on that left hand side, the way it brought someone like Simmons in, and hopefully, yeah, that'll be something that we can work on moving forward. And now, 10 games in, we can head into the international break in the top four, and yeah, let's let's hope that that's an omen to carry on this season. And yeah, in terms of the content next week, there's obviously going to be an international break. So rather than speaking about a match, I think we're just going to have a little look into the opening 10 games of Thomas Frank's tenure and see how that goes. And until then, at Spurs.